The next one we calling as a services. So what is mean by services? What are the services we offered? So for example, when discussing about the transport layer, when discussing about the services provided by transport layer, for example, as we discussed the packaging or as reliable or else tokenization or else we calling as a connection control, all this comes to the picture in the service provided by the transport layer. So those things we discuss in this session. So basically what is meant by this transport layer? So as we mentioned, transport layer which we calling as end-to-end delivery, we apparently calling as a process-to-process delivery, because one process, one source system process to the one source system is connected to the destination system, which we calling as a end-to-end communication, which means calling as a process-to-process kind of communication. We form that one, that should be end-to-end delivery kind of things we calling as a process-to-process delivery. And we have to maintain the respective addressing mechanism based upon internet protocol values, and we offering the reliable of delivery. If any data is failed, or we go for any kind of retransmission process, or definitely we'll go for this accuracy perspective or data granularity perspective, this should be a reliable data delivery. And when you go for this connection control or else when you go for this congestion control, we measure the quality of services, which you go for the flow of control mechanism, we are using that one. And we calling as a multiplexing, we go for encoding or decoding or as multiplexing or demultiplexing. All these kind of services is offered by the transport layer. But what is meant by this services here? So but when for example when discussing about this process to process, or else we go for this addressing mechanism, or else we go for this a reliable kind of data delivery, or else we go for this a flow control mechanism, or else a different kind of multiplexing services we getting that one. So when we go for this a process to process mechanism or P2P mechanism, so how the process established? Because anyway this should be mixing this host to host mechanism, and we go for this the node to node delivery mechanism. So that is also forming over here, but in the high level kind of structure it has to maintain the end-to-end delivery. And if every kind of IP address which you go for use that, we go for this, we are using a version 4 or version 6, whatever the address we are using that, what are the version we are using that one. So every system or every node to a network we having is a particular addressing we have that one. So that should be based upon that should be we have to maintain the reliable kind of deliveries. And we go for this a quality of services, the flow of control mechanism, we go for this a jitter mechanism, or as with respect to bandwidth, or as all these things we discussed in the previous sessions of quality of services in the flow control mechanism are all the kind of services they offered in the transport layer as well. So how it is offered to maintain the granularity of data, to if any there is no chances of this data failure kind of thing, the data retransmission kind of perspective, we have to maintain the quality of services, and you have to maintain the a connection less communication, a connection oriented communication as well, a connection control kind of communication as well. And so these are the services to the upper layer. What is upper layer? Maybe a session layer or presentation layer, or maybe application layer. So it has to give the efficient, reliable and cost effective services. We have to provide the services to the application layer. That should be end layer. That should be the user usage stage layer. So we have to provide the reliable and efficient usage of this one. For example, if I'm using any kind of applications, so in the application end to end, I need to check what is the any kind of issues are there while using that one. Any lag is there, any delay kind of service is there, how the information is transmitted, how the information received, how much delays happen, how much amount of granularity is there, how much amount of throughput is there. All these things we analyzed, that should be then we can able to provide the efficient and reliable services. That should be comes to the cost effective services only. And the two things are there. One is connection oriented communication as well as connection less communication. We having as connection oriented communication as well as we having as a connection less communication. But what is meant by this network layer, and what is the transport layer? What kind of needed, what necessity we have that one from the network layer? What does the network layer do? Network layer do that is the packets is transferred in the form of host only. In the transport, the information transport is there, that acting as information transmitted to the host only. But here the transport layer information is transmitted process to process, but that transport is that kind of host services is needed to end-to-end communication, end-to-end delivery. So that is you can able to say the packet is transferred between the host range values only, host to host communication only. And this should be having as a reliable network, and we calling as a, what kind of mean by reliable network? What is mean this reliable communication, reliable services? So how can we say data accuracy or data granularity or data trusting mechanism? So that should be the relationship between network and transport layer, we having that one. So here the host to host communication, which means the host is obviously connected to the process to process communication. Host, that calling as a end of the day we are able to establish this process to process, end of the day we establish end to end delivery mechanism. And we also having as a transport services. What is transport services? We having as independent network, and we having as a reliable kind of services, a more reliable kind of services we are using that one. And in the network we having as a, it run by the carrier, and part of the communication is subnet for wireless wide area network. So while discussing about this a part of the network, because while discussing about any kind of usage of network values, so what kind of routing algorithm we are using that one, what kind of routing algorithm we are using that one, and how the information is transmitted. So what kind of routing table which we developed that one, and how it is runs by the carrier network layer, and is a part of sub network in the as subset in the my wide area network communication. And what are the services provided upper layer? We can able to say the services provided the upper layer, we go for the application layer or maybe session layer, we can able to see that one. But the information, the bottom 4 layer can be go for this a transport service provided, but in above the layer, above 3 layers, we calling as a transport service layer. In this one, in the OSI reference model, down the layer, down the 4 layers, we calling as a transport service provider, but above 3 layers we go for this transport layer or session layer or presentation layer or application layer. These 3 layers which we calling as a transport service user model, which means these are allows to access the transport services, which means every transport service is the end-to-end communication. So transport must have provided the some operations application program to end-to-end information, we have that one. So each and every transport service having as own interface, we having that one. So here that interface services, that transport is similar network services, but some more important difference is that what is the major difference over here? That is interface to model communication. What kind of service we are offer that one? That is interfaced by a real network communication, that may be a what any kind of real kind of network architecture will presence that one. So that may lose the packet, but these services is generally unreliable. While you go for this connection only communication, that transport services is reliable. Obviously when you go for this connectionless communication is much more different as connection only communication, because the connection only communication the information is transmitted to the prescribed path, but while come to this connectionless communication, that may be a gentle manner, that should be unreliable kind of communication. And the second difference is between the network service and transport service. So here the transport services, which is intended for the network, which is indeed for the communications, and the transport services only by the transport entities. But when you go for this is the network entities and the transport entities, when we taken up this one of these transport services, a few users or programs see the bare network services, because multiple users or the multiple programs are runs in the transport primitives, that should be ended. There should be a consecutively or there should be comes to services must be a convenient use convenient and used to easy to use of services we are offering that one. And what are the simple service primitives we have that one? What are simple service primitives we have that one? We have to go for this connection, send, receive and disconnect. So we just simple establish the we having a source is there and we having destination is there. We simple establish connection between the source and destination, that we calling as a connect. So once the connection established, we simply send the information, we transmit the information. Once information is received successfully, then we discard the connection. That's simple kind of service primitives we offered in the transport layer. And but how to handle the incoming connection request? Because here information is transmitted from source destination, source is acting as transporter. But what means by this destination layer, the receiver connection, the incoming connection, how we are able to identify the service process? Here the process we calling as a wait for the connection request. We calling as a previously discussing about stop and wait protocol kind of things. Here we have to wait for the connection request. By for example, I need to transfer information from one place to another place. So but I need to wait the connection request, I need to wait for the connection request from the client. Then we have to listen the connection. Once we get the connection, once we get the request, then again go for the same connection, establishment, send, receive and discard. but here we have to wait for this connection request. That is a important parameters, important primitives in the transport layer. And so I'll conclude this session. In this session, we discussing about what kind of services we offer, that one, because while discussing about process to process delivery, which we discussing about is a transfer protocol data unit kind of structure, while connection between this one host to another host, this transfer protocol data unit plays a vital role. At the same time, the transport to transport or transport to down the layers, how the information is transmitted, how the information is received, that is also important for us, because we have to maintain the accuracy level, granularity level, that is also important. So those kind of services we discuss in the transport layer. So how we discuss this one? While we source is there as well, destination is there. So while information is transmitted, if this station is ideal or if this station is wait for the service request, then only the connection is establishment, then information transmitted or information received. After all the successful that one, we get the acknowledgement, then the connection is disconnected. That kind of services offered on the transport layer. Thank you.